Hey, listeners, this is Thang here with the EpicMetaPodcast. Just a quick announcement before we start the show. We had a lot of technical difficulties during the recording of this show. There was a lot of microphone and on my side, a lot of adjustment. So please bear with us if you hear any kind of sound discrepancy, any kind of conversation overlap, any kind of stop and go moments, or it just didn't sync quite right. I did my best, so hopefully you can still enjoy it as one normal conversation episode that we normally would have. All right, here we go.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Epic Meta Podcast. Tang, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm on my third cup of coffee, so I'm very good.
Yeah, I think
How about you?
it's at least 2.5 for me. I tend to refill halfway sometimes. So.
Yeah. So I'm more awake than the normal schedule where I wake up late and rush. So it's good. It's good.
Hmm.
How about you? You're doing good too, right?
Yeah, I've been up since 5.
Wow. Why?
Well, it's day 12 of my 21-day
Oh yeah.
morning
You're trying.
chant.
How's it going so far? Like generally,
Oh, it's
positive, negative?
Yeah, it's awesome. The chant I do is a I believe it's Tibetan, but it has to do with perfect. The idea behind it is perfecting the self. So.
Wow, we might have to do an episode on all this whole thing when you're done with it, because I'm kind of curious. What's the difference between waking up early and then waking up early and doing your specific program, right?
Well,
Because there's a lot of like people just wake up early, go work out, and they like swear to it. Tons of videos and information out there about that kind of stuff. But the delineation between your program versus the rest will be a cool topic to explore.
sure. Yeah, let's put that on the calendar. So, the audience might be wondering why I opened the podcast today, whereas Tang usually does it. And that's a good question, audience. I appreciate you asking that. The reason is because this episode I will be interviewing Tang, and the reason why I'm interviewing Tang is there's been a lot of clamoring out there from our audience to learn more about us. Actually, my sister was interested in knowing more about your story, so. That's what we're doing today. Are you up for it, Tang?
Sure. Fantastic. Plus episode planning, so it works out.
On your side. Okay, so why don't we get started? Oh, I forgot to switch my chair. I'll try not to creak it. Okay, so tell me a little bit about yourself. How old are you, first of all?
I am 38 this year.
38.
So, yeah.
Okay. And what kind of job do you have?
I currently work in a sales function. It's called inside sales, and it has to do with enterprise software. It's something new. Like I think in the late 90s they start doing it. But that's what I do.
What is enterprise software? What does that mean?
So enterprise software is, typically we think of software, but enterprise software, I would say it as more B2B. So B2B is business to business, whereas B2C is business to consumer. So when you buy Windows, XP or Windows, whatever 10 that you use, or, anything that you use on your phone, an app, that's business to consumers. Whereas business to business is, for example, things that you might see or hear commercial for, and you're like, what the hell is that? It's like AWS Cloud or Azure Cloud, or things that Microsoft server system. I didn't know until I go into this world that all that kind of stuff exists, right? And so that's enterprise software, generally speaking.
Okay, and so what are the concerns that a B2B application would have versus a B2C application?
Typically, it's scale. So a business would buy a solution to fix something or to provide a function, but the scale is way crazy. So let's say you use Gmail as an inbox, right? But you have 5,000 employees or 1,000 employees, and it's cheaper and better process and control, protected, serve if you use something else. Gmail in itself is a B2B version. There's a B2B version of it out there, but typically it's scale. So, you buy a mouse, but then let's say you have 5,000 employees. Well, then you're going to go to you know, um, a vendor, not like Best Buy, but something else in this world, and you say I need 5,000 mouse, and they provide everything plus support, um, you know, repairs, etc. Stuff like that. It's like the scale is way different. So it's the same thing that we use in our computers, the same thing that we use in our daily lives, but typically software that we don't come into and we don't care about most of the time.
Okay.
So
Sounds like
does that help?
yeah,
I don't
sure.
know.
Sounds like scale and security are two major concerns.
Well, yeah, I think you work in technology as a CTO, so you probably purchase some stuff for your teams and coworkers and colleagues. And enterprise is very much the same. It's just the scale is way crazy. So typically, it's software like for anyone who studied business, they probably hear of SAP or Oracle. But if you don't work in this world, you're just like, I don't know what they do. Like, I would never use anything, right? But then when you come to this world, you realize, oh, okay, this is what they do. Now, I don't specifically work in that domain, but that is considered enterprise software also.
Okay.
So,
And your marital status seems like you're single.
yeah, I don't know why that has anything to do with the show, but yes, I'm currently single. Yep.
Ladies, take note. What do you mean it has? I'm interviewing you. It
Yeah,
has.
sure. But I guess this is not a job interview per se. So yeah, it does go
Yeah,
personal. Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm single. Fair
single.
enough.
And so, tell me about your family.
So my family is my parents plus three other siblings. They're all sisters. I'm the only boy in the family, and the age range is really deep. So typically when I talk about my family, I tell other people that my parents didn't do any family planning. The age gap between me and my oldest sibling is 15 years. So between the two of us, there's two other siblings, and they're also about 4 to 5 years apart. So it's crazy age range. Um, you think of like Irish families or any other family that's Catholic, and they have 6, 7 kids, and then the age range is crazy. Well, it's kind of the same thing with us, except we have less. So it's only 4 kids,
Mhm.
but the gap is large, and so I think that's somewhat affect the way I process the world. I'm sure it has to play in, but that's and then two of the sisters are married with kids. The other one is still single as well, and then I have a combined between two families about let's see, 4, 5, 6 nephews, and then two nieces.
Hmm.
So yeah.
And they all live in the same area as you? Or?
Yeah, we managed to squeeze everybody around Raleigh, North Carolina area. We kind of tend to move together. We used to be from Cleveland area, and then when I went to the army, I came back. The the two siblings were here, and then the one sister and the parents were in Cleveland for a while. And then I think 2018, 2019, so last year I moved the parents down here as well. So have a tendency to stick together.
Huh.
Yeah. So they're all around greater North Carolina, Raleigh area. Yeah.
Okay. Now, you grew up in Vietnam until you were 10, is that right?
Yeah. 10 and a half,
Okay.
11.
Do you
Yep.
have a lot of
Correct.
memories from Vietnam?
I do. But it's mostly like, I would say childhood
Hmm.
memories. Uh, so yeah, I do remember. Yeah. In that sense, yes. So it's very, yeah.
So, talk about that. What was it like to grow up in Vietnam?
I would say I think I grew up in the city, so I'm an urban kid. Like, if you talk to anyone in New York or something, they grew up in like apartments, and that's like normal. So that's my concept of how life should be, and I would say it's very similar. I think the only thing that's different is what is different? Maybe technology is different, but other than that, it's similar stuff. I think schooling obviously is different, but other than that, it's very normal. I had a normal childhood. It's not nothing extraordinary. But my memories of Vietnam is just to the childhood memories, so it's tied in one another, right? It's not like if you read about it, it's going on vacation kind of memory. So I just all tie into childhood onto one thing. They're all interconnected.
How
Um, but
how
yeah.
is the schooling different?
So Vietnam is a model of communism that is off of China communism, which is off of Russia communism. So in the morning when you go to class, well, first of all, public school, you still have a uniform. Um, Southeast Asia loves uniform, and even if you are not a communist country like South Korea or Japan, if you consume any media, you notice they wear uniform. I don't want to say suits, but it's very polished. And so as grade school kids, you wear like slacks and a shirt. But because the temperature, you're allowed to wear short sleeve, right? So usually it's a white shirt, blue pants, I believe, and then you wear. And sometimes I'm kind of re-educating myself on the culture. You wear a necktie. I forgot what the term is called, but it's a red necktie, for communism. So it's very
Like a
I
neckerchief,
would say,
something like the Boy Scouts wear up here.
yeah, correct. Very Boy Scout-ish. But it's that kind of thing. So it's that vibe where it's very, follow the rules kind of thing. And then what's unique is that you wake up or you start the school day, everybody's on the playground lining up, and you do essentially basic stretches, and then you start the school day. They have the whole thing, right? Here it's like you go to your homeroom, right? If there's a homeroom, and then you do Pledge of Allegiance or something like that, and then you start the school day. Well, there it's the entire school on the playground. I think that's yeah. I mean, other than the entire education system, that in my experience, I keep remembering that. And then recess. So when I came to the States, I came to California, and if you don't move as a kid, it's very hard for you to kind of get it. But if you move around, you understand that different school, different cities, different state, they have budgets, right? Like now it's adult, I understand that. So California, because they have more space and the schools are typically larger, middle schools are like physically like roomier. So if you're from the east, which I spent amount of time in Cleveland, typically is a building like vertical, right? 3, 4, 5 floors, etc. Well, in California, West Coast is warmer, and I assume any state that's warmer, it's spread out, right? So the school buildings itself is spread out, so you have a lot of time to run around. So I remember having recess that was literally 30, 40 minutes because of the schedule. And you just, run around, play, which
This was California or Vietnam?
this is
Okay.
California. In Vietnam, you have no recess. Maybe it was 15 minutes. And they break out because of lack of space. They break out the schedule morning to afternoon and afternoon to like late afternoon-ish. So it's a different kind of like here in North Carolina, we have the whatever they call it, the in-out system, where it's like rolling cycle of schools where you're like, I forgot what they call it. What did they call it?
Yeah,
You know what I'm talking
yeah.
about?
My
Where's
daughters did it, and I should have this term on the tip of my tongue, but I'm struggling to remember.
right, but there's no vacation. There's no summer vacation.
Right.
There is vacation every whatever the schedule they determine. But because of the lack of space, they do that.
Mhm.
So Vietnam adopted something similar, but it's different, of course. And so I remember being shocked, like, so you just hang out right now and play? I had a blast, right? And in Vietnam, the school, even for fifth Yeah, I mean, even at third grade, you already felt, I would call it educational pressure or performance pressure, because there is no, I think there is falling back a grade, right? But it's a way bigger deal than it is here. I mean, it's still here. Here is still bad, but you don't spank your kids and scold them to the end of the earth kind of bad. Over there, if you fall behind, it is the end of the world for you as a child. It's pretty bad. You don't want to do it. So yeah, I would say that you can't write about that or explain that enough. You have to experience it to kind of understand or watch movies or something. But it's really hard to explain the pressure kids are under over in the East because it's not just Vietnam; it's all the other countries too. But I would say coming over here, recess, no homework on Fridays. Just the amount of play I would say is it's way different. So fifth grade, sixth grade, you don't get real serious homework until maybe high school, like maybe. And I would just, it was easy. It was just hang out. It's a lot of hanging out with buddies at school, so it's great. Yeah, I love
Mhm.
it.
Now, okay, you said that life was similar to here when you were living in Vietnam, but you just talked about it, the pressure, how it's different, and
Yeah,
on a previous podcast, you talked about how there's societal shame for people who don't perform well, and it kind of attaches itself to the family. Um, so it does sound like there's a different mindset in Vietnam versus America. Is there anything that you can talk about to sort of illuminate that a little bit more?
yeah. There's definitely a difference, right? But in regards to memory as a child, it's very normal or similar to just childhood memories. So the difference in living, oh boy, like where to start, right? I would say specifically with regards to work, Vietnam is a weird blend. So I like it because we have, like most countries, like so the Philippines got, I believe, colonized by the Portuguese or maybe the Spanish.
Spanish.
Um, Spanish. And then India got colonized by British for 400 years too, right? And Vietnam is colonized by the French for only 100 years. But that was enough that there are certain French words in the culture. But the best thing that I take away, like different people, of course, have different experiences. Not you know, but my experience, the thing that I love the most, and the thing that I notice the most when I go back there or when I, um, think about Vietnam is the concept of the laissez-faire approach to life. So of all the things that the French love, that concept is by far the thing I appreciate most. And so it's a weird mix of all the Eastern religions and society values plus chilling out. I think the French chills out really good. They drink wine. They don't stress out about work, right? They work to live. And of all the things that's different from Vietnam to America, like there's so many things that's different, right? It's really hard to paint a picture. I would say that by far is the most thing I appreciate or I retain or think about all the time. Um, the afternoon nap, the siesta. No, I forgot what it's called.
Well, in Spanish,
Um,
it's siesta. I don't know what it is in French.
in French, but the French have the same thing, and then Vietnam also adopted it, so it's it's great, and we don't have it here. So, uh, like you literally, shop would close. So if you go to like I don't know somewhere around noon or 1, they might not be open, and they tell you to come back, and that's how it is. So
Yeah,
definitely love that stuff, but
the siesta, the afternoon nap. When I'm working, definitely I slow down during the afternoon, and a nap is nice. But then
mhm.
when I get up from the nap, I'm not very productive at all. So
No, productivity is not a important thing.
it's
So
just
yeah,
enough that you show up in the afternoon. Um,
yeah. If you wanna, I think I understand your question, and I think you're kind of steering it to somewhere, but it has to be like a little bit more specific for me to answer.
okay.
it's really difficult, right? Like if you're talking about lifestyle or education or food or holidays, maybe I can answer better. So I'm not sure if I answered your previous question.
I'm just trying to get a flavor of it, just trying to poke around the
Yeah.
edges, I guess. Um, so in the school, so when you lived there, the Vietnam War was over, or was it in the process of ending?
Oh
It was
yeah.
over.
No, it's over in 75. So it's before I was born.
Oh, okay. So what was the
Yeah.
view of the United States that they taught you in school, or the general perception?
So my education was so little, like 5th grade, and it ended, right? Cuz then I moved to the States. So I don't remember. I don't think there was. Uh it's very like I would say it's agnostic. Like I don't remember studying World War or anything like that, right? Because like here you don't study that stuff until like high
Mhm.
school. So 5th grade, just like run around, do some stuff, like read some stuff. Like that's bare bones, like anything, any exposure, right? So I can't speak for that. I don't
That
remember.
that's interesting,
You have to ask somebody else.
and the United States inflicted a lot of damage on Vietnam, so I would expect there to be some resentment. Um,
I think so. Yeah, generally there is resentment, but I don't remember like watching TV news. Like news is not the same here, right? So if you remember, you have to, delineate between your childhood memories versus your high school education memories, right? And uh, I don't remember. So the way the news work there is like 30-minute block sequences, and then it's not 24-hour news here. And then even for America, way back when they have programming schedules where it's news cycle from 6 to 8 p.m. and then it stops. Whereas 24-hour news channel just like we have today is a newer thing, and so I don't remember being exposed to that all that much. Um, and the education, I had so little of it, so I don't most. But yes, it is a negative view for the most part, but it changes now, right? So after the '90s, when they open up for general trade or economics, it's very different. It's a dual thing with similar to China now, right? So it's communist by politics, but for businesses, a capitalist. So yeah.
okay, so your family immigrated. What year did your family immigrate?
1993, but my dad was here since
Okay, and
82.
what was the reason
So,
that your
or
family chose
84.
to move from Vietnam to the United States?
So like after the war or before the war or during the war, a lot of people choose to leave for economic reasons. Period. So it's basically universal immigration story. Um, but yeah, it's hard to make a living there. But now is a lot
Mm-hmm.
different, right? So yeah, I would say that's for the most
Okay.
part.
And you had mentioned your father was in a re-education camp. So did he fight for South Vietnam during the war? He did. Okay.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. They don't do that if you fight for North Vietnam. So
So
yeah.
was that part of the reason
Yeah.
why your family immigrated? Just because?
Yeah, I'm sure that's part of it. I don't talk to my parents about like why you do it. It's almost as basic as people want to come to America even now, right? It doesn't it's not a mystery. So if you ever go visit somewhere or it's common sense as I want to go to Paris and see the tower, right? Or I want to go to Europe and you know
Mhm.
vacation. Is very normal. So I'm not sure if I'm explaining the question, but there's no like is this a making like decide family meeting kind of thing? No, it's like the entire population want to leave. So it's whoever is lucky enough or have enough resources to do it, they do it. There's no like, yeah.
It- okay. And there was no government pressure to stop people from immigrating,
Oh
or?
no, it's yeah, there was there was pressure. You basically have to, it's refugees for a reason. Um, but it's not like you do paperwork and leave. No, it's not like that. If that makes any sense. But yeah.
Okay. Um, so was it difficult to assimilate when you arrived in the United States?
I would say for the most part, yeah. If you were, I say if you're like 13 and up, life is gonna be terrible for you. But I was at 10 or 11, and I'm lucky enough to move to California first. And I think that's a big, big deal. It's a big factor in my assimilation process because I don't know if you know this, but outside of Vietnam, California has the biggest Vietnamese population in the world. So there are more Vietnamese in California than you know the rest of the United States combined, probably maybe second.
Hmm.
So where we were allowed me to kind of make friends with other Vietnamese kids that were going through the same thing, so that helped. But because I was a kid and school wasn't pressure, it's easier. So like past high school age, if you were, let's say, 20 something going to college, forget it. Life is gonna be terrible for you. Um, so that experience I don't have, and I won't speak to it because you have to interview somebody else or read about it. But yeah, generally as a kid, assimilating anywhere is much easier for you than if you're a teenager or adult, right? So that's yeah, I was lucky in that sense.
So did your older siblings have a harder time?
I imagine so. I wouldn't know, but
Okay.
yeah. I mean, just imagine you moving somewhere and knowing zero of the language, and then just picking up and going back to college again because your degree is worth nothing. That's generally how other people experience life, and that's if you were so like I have friends who are also immigrants, right? Like I have a college buddy who's know other people and have aunts and uncles that were medical doctors and wherever, and then move here. They basically have to redo their education again because United States medical hospitals don't trust the degree that you have from wherever university that you have it. Even if you were a doctor for 10 years or something, right? The practices are different here. So that aside, let's say you were a college professor, let's say just anything, you pretty much have to do it over. So that's terrible for adults, right? They have to do pretty much redefine and uproot their lives. So yeah,
Hmm.
that was I would say that's pretty tough, but people do it for their kids, right? So that's the general story.
Okay. Um, I want to go back to something. Now, you've said a few times that your father doesn't like to talk about his experience in the.
Hmm.
Um, is is do you have any idea why that's a touchy subject on his part?
Um, I would say this. Yeah, I think it's probably like terrible, and he doesn't process it well. But then again, I also don't have the normal relationship um, that a person would have with their father. So he left and became a refugee in 1984 when I was 2. And so when I reconnected with him when I was 10, 11, that was 93. That was a long gap. So it's not like, playing catch with your dad kind of experience. It's more like, your relationship with your grandfather or something. It's very different. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't have like, man to man talk, go fishing. We did go fishing for a while, and at first I liked it and then I hated it. So it was too boring. So my we have a relationship, but we don't talk the way I would say other, and that's including my mom too, right? We don't talk the way like my older siblings would talk to them. I think my older sister and then the second older sister have a better average normalized, think of your normal, you know s- child to parents relationship, whereas me is more there's a more of a gap. So I've
Mm.
never talked to him directly. This kind of conversations, it doesn't really happen with me and my dad. It's
because
different.
because it's uncomfortable to do that, or just.
It's one is uncomfortable. Two, my relationship with him is different. So it's not like we just hang out and talk about stuff. I
Mhm.
don't I don't call my parents and like, hey, this is what's going on today. I don't do that. I think there's a reason why daughters to parents are easier than sons to parents. But maybe I'm over generalizing because I've seen other, or I've met other, I have friends and whatnot, and they have a very, I was almost sibling like relationship with their parents, right? They just talk to them like, their friends or whatever. And maybe because I have such a gap with my dad, that I don't do that as much. So, yeah. It just never came up. But mostly I would say it's because of our relationship versus his experience. So, like, let's say he has buddies, he would talk to them about that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So,
Okay.
no, I would say it's not because, like, we avoid talking about it. Just we don't do it because I'm not the right audience to do it with.
Okay. Interesting. Um, so you moved to California from Vietnam, and then you moved from California to Cleveland. Is that right?
Yeah,
And
correct.
how long were you in California? When did you move to Cleveland?
I was in California until 96, so like 2 years, 2.5 years maybe. And then in Cleveland, I spent the majority of my life. So I would say that's my hometown, quote unquote. But
And what was the
yeah,
reason for moving from California to Cleveland?
primarily I think it was because my one older sibling wanted to hook up and get married with her current husband, and I think we were going to just move. So I think I don't remember right, but I think the older sibling and the second oldest moved to Cleveland first and stayed there maybe a year or two. And then we did like a family trip to visit, and then we just never left. The move wasn't a decisive move. It just happened organically, I suppose.
In California?
He was working, and then he basically stopped working when he moved to Cleveland. I'm sure there's family drama there that that's unprocessed. But yeah, he doesn't work in Cleveland for the time we were there, or didn't work.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess I would normally assume that when a family moves from one state to another, they do that because there's a job change involved. But that doesn't seem to be the case in your situation.
Yeah, I think it was more family thing than job change. It's not like you get a career and then you get a job that's better. No, it's not like that. It was family trying to stay together more important than anything else. Because originally I was such a child, but I remember the two older siblings moved because California is very expensive, right? Even in the 90s, it was still expensive. And they realized economically it doesn't work, so they had to also find jobs. But I think my dad was pushing them to go to college and get technical degrees, like 2-year degrees, which is then they disagree with him and want to pursue something else, want to start working. And there's probably some family drama there, so they left and tried to find some opportunities elsewhere. And this is like pre-internet, pre-cell phones, so they did what they thought was best, and then the family just kind of followed them around. So I think that's my theory behind it, and I think it's pretty true.
Okay.
Yep.
So okay. So you were in Cleveland for high school, I guess.
High school, college, and then another few years. Yeah.
But you were in the Army as well.
Correct.
Did you go to college before the Army or after the Army?
After.
After. Okay. So let's talk about the Army.
Mm-hmm.
What was your experience like? And how many years were you in the Army?
I was in there for 4 years. So yeah.
Okay. And why did you choose to go into the Army?
It's a combination of factors. So it was mostly economic. It was 2008, 2009 economic crash, and I was just, I was part of like a layoff. I was burnt out. I didn't like Cleveland anymore, and I just wanted to leave. Plus the Army and any federal service, even the post office. If you go, well, not the post office. If you go and do a contract with them, they have I guess a perk. It's called the Civil Service Member Relief Act. So basically, any debt, especially credit cards, they will lower the APR of that debt down to 6%. So at the time, I had a crew or acquire a few things, and mostly, yeah, finding a job, leaving town. So it's a combination of factors, and then I'm just tired of all of it, and I want to explore something else. So not not the most. I mean, it's logical in like a Vulcan sense, but of course, it's terrible in like not involving your family in the decisions kind of sense, and yeah. So I did it, and then I just made a decision, and I go. So.
Was your family against that decision?
I think so, but it was too late, right? So by the time I announced my decision, it was already 2 weeks too late. I need to leave, and I think for the most part they were against, but they also understand. It's like this is after college, right? You, what are you gonna do? Stop me? You can't, So it's they understand.
I thought you said you went. I thought you said you went into the army before college.
No, after. I said after.
After.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I misheard you. But you were an enlisted man.
Correct. So, do you know the difference between enlisted and officer?
Yeah, and it's my understanding that if you have a college degree, that's sort of an entry into the officer corps.
Correct.
Is that
correct? But at the time, due to timeline, and also I just didn't want to deal with it. If you go officer, it's basically you go through this process, kind of like another job interview. Whereas enlisted is automatic. They need you for your body. As long as you have functioning mechanical body, that's all they need it for. Especially the job I was going for. So it's a faster process. And I was so distraught with being physically in Cleveland and the house, and I just literally wanted to leave. And this make the most sense because I could cover expenses, blah blah blah, debt. Like it makes a lot of sense out in other things. So I left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you're unemployed, that it's psychologically traumatizing, as we've discussed in the past. And the army gives you like a structure, I would imagine.
Yeah.
To enter, and so a lot of those anxieties are allayed because.
Yeah, I would say in like family terms, if I've told I think one of my nephew about this, but I would say like it's comparable to running away. After years after it, I was sitting down thinking about it. It's basically running away at the time. The other solution, or one of the many solutions out there, was to just get a second job or work 2-3 jobs or something to make ends meet. But it wasn't just that; it was also getting away from Cleveland and my family also. So that's part. It's the solution that solve a lot of multiple problems. So that's why I did that. But it wasn't like this is like my passion in life, and then I was inspired by somebody. It's nothing like that. I chose something that make the most sense and allow me to leave the fastest. So I did try the Navy right before the Army. I don't know if you know about the recruitment office, but it's basically you go into this little tiny office in a shopping plaza, and they have like everybody there, right? And these people are basically recruiter is actually a job too, and they just kind of walk you through, see what's a good fit. But the problem with the Navy is their numbers are a lot smaller, right? And so the Army is by far the biggest numbers as population, which means they need bodies. So if you watch any movies, you realize that people do 20 years and retire. Like that's like the thing, and it's a contract base. So you don't even have to do 20 years. You can do 3, 4, 2. It's just how you negotiate it. And typically, people come in and out of the Army all the time, very fast. So their numbers are always changing. Same thing with Navy, same thing with everything else. But the thing with a smaller force is once you're in, people have a tendency to stay, right, and leave and whatnot. And so the Army has a lot of movement, whereas the Navy, the job I was going for, wouldn't be leaving for basic training for 6 months. So it was a long time. And at the time I was like, no, I need to like leave now. So what's funny, what's terrible is I've seen the movie Stripes. I don't know if you ever seen the movie Stripes with Bill Murray.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yep.
And I thought, you go in, you sign one little piece of paper. No, it was stacks and stacks of paper. It was basically a mortgage. Think of buying a house with a mortgage. That's the amount of paperwork you have to go to deal with to sign up, and it was ridiculous. And I was like, this is not simple at all. Like, I thought this was Stripe. You want me to do 5 push-ups? It wasn't like that. It was a whole process. So yeah, and I did it. So I tried that. The Navy didn't work. The number's too small. I looked at the officer thing, and it was just too. It was also a long-term kind of thing. The interview process and all that stuff. It was just gonna take some time, and I was too. I wasn't patient enough. I was too impatient, so I did what I did and joined the infantry, enlisted.
Did you enjoy your experience in the Army?
Things I like and there are things I don't, right? And it's very, yeah.
What did you like?
For me, for somebody who's so, I would say for me, if you like not thinking, it's great. So if you like turning off your brain, it's fantastic. I had problems adjusting, of course, but other than that, yeah, if you like that, that's good. If you like,
because it's so structured and there's always someone telling you what to do.
what I signed up for was like the least, like the lowest in the totem pole. So it's like you don't have any responsibilities whatsoever. So there's no middle management stress. There's zero stress other than physical stress and dealing with essentially, you equate it to managers or sergeants who are just terrible people. But other than that, it's fine. So you know how to compartmentalize, which you learn real fast, then you're good. If you have a problem with compartmentalizing, which a lot of people do, then you're not gonna have a good time. So.
What do you mean by compartmentalizing in that context?
So when you're most of the time infantry is they call it infantry for a reason. It's teenagers, 18 to 20 something. Compartmentalizing is knowing how to deal with stress, and especially knowing where your limitation and your actions impact versus the things that you cannot impact. So it's kind of like, things you can do versus things you cannot do. And if you don't know how to differentiate between that, you're not going to have a good time at all. You're going to be stressed out all the time. Almost everybody is a functioning alcoholic in the Army, especially infantry, and it's just like compounding amount of stress on, more and more stress all the time. So
can you give me an example of a situation where someone couldn't compartmentalize properly?
So let's say you work with somebody, right? And they literally yell at you and berate you, and you feel the most insulted you ever become. But 10 minutes later, that person is your best friend and want to hang out with you at the bar and drink a beer. That's compartmentalizing. And if you don't know how to do that, and if you equate and take things personally, you're not going to have a good time. So, we read about or learn about suicide, soldier suicide, depression, all this stuff. It's, times it by 100, and that's the reality. So whatever you see on the news, the articles you read, that's just the bare minimum. Like, you're just scratching the surface. I wouldn't, like my nephews right now, like when we talk about stuff, I would recommend them to go to the Air Force, and I would never allow them. They better be hiding it from me if they sign up, but I would not recommend this. Knowing who they are, I would recommend maybe to one kid, but for the most part, no, I wouldn't recommend to the other kids. They don't have the personality to deal with it. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, does that make? I don't know. I mean, compartmentalizing in normal corporate term means you kind of break out certain problems, right? In the Army life is knowing which problem you can actually fix, and then immediately
not worrying about the ones you
Yes,
can't.
immediately learn to de-stress as fast as you possibly humanly could, which is very difficult. And I think my ability to do that come from the part that I was actually older. I was working in a normal corporate environment already, and then I still had to adjust, but I just a little bit. I would say mentally a little bit faster than everybody else. Not that everybody else didn't know how to do it, but they vent in different ways, right? Typically, it's drinking. Yeah, which I do too, but it's not as I would say not as bad because I understand what was going on. So.
Right, you weren't trying to numb out your feelings. You were trying to.
Yeah. I think, yeah, correct. Pretty much. If you're 18, high schooler, didn't go to college yet, didn't know anything about life, you would not have a good time, and so that's where the problems come from.
But don't they want those types of those
Yes.
moldable minds?
Correct. So it's a dual, right? And I read about it, and it's really, the training and the mental thing. They do a thing where they're trying to make you feel and think that you're invincible, but at the same time pliable enough so that they can tell you whatever they want to tell you and you believe it. So it's a dual kind of double blade kind of or double edge kind of thing. And it makes sense. This is why they call it the infantry. And it's in the sense of like general warfare, like World War I and World War II with front lines. It makes absolute perfect sense. But I think after World War II, pretty much everything else is a conflict kind of style. And so, do you still need the way the army is structured? Probably, but it's keeping evolving, and now like you see movies and stuff like that, it's all special forces, right? It's all like unique, super elite, and that's because we evolved to have conflict-based warfare versus invasion-based warfare. I suppose we don't do that as much anymore. I think after Iraq, that was the last time we ever invade like a city or a country. So now it's all conflict, right? Even since the 80s, it's that kind of style of warfare. And so you still need that. You still need the basic infantry, but you're going to have problems, right? Because of the way you run things. Like people are not, generally speaking, mature enough to process and compartmentalize. And if you don't teach that, which they absolutely don't, right? There's, you're just a body, then you're going to have problems, right? So that's my theory. There's no way to prove it. I don't know how to prove it, so.
That's okay. I'm not requiring you to prove anything. So, did you go to Iraq? Is that where you were deployed?
No, I went to Afghanistan. So I was with the phase that I came in oh God, now I forget. I came in 2010. So Iraq was over-ish. And so I was part with the army was in. So there's like mission for a large group, right? And then there's mission, it's start breaking down into your little specific tiny mission, right? That's how it generally works. So the entire army was in this mission called Operation Enduring Freedom. So it's called OEF for short. And then they break it down and break it down and break it down. And when it comes to you have very specific missions. So in a larger sense, Afghanistan is Operation Enduring Freedom. And then OIF is Iraq, Operation Ensuring Freedom. I don't know. I don't remember. But it's OIF and OEF, and what I was with is OEF. So it's after. I was with Afghanistan, but.
And what was your specific mission in Afghanistan?
So there was a river in Afghanistan, and you can look it up on Google Maps too, where I was. And my specific mission is my battalion. Battalion is like a large group that's 1,000-ish. 2,000, depending on how it works, people. And the entire battalion is occupying this entire river. I forgot what the river is called. I had to look up this area once. But basically, we are training local villagers into what we call ALP, Afghan Local Police. So we were working on this program to essentially win hearts and minds. And the theory was that if you hire, train develop local villagers that are, and when you say village, it's literally, in the city between, like, let's say Apex and Cary. That's like, two different village, very, very far. But if you say, let's say Cary and Morrisville, then it's a little bit closer. But imagine a country with no, infrastructure, and cars are very limited. Um, what you're looking to do is source people from that local village so that they're loyal to the people in that village. And so that's how uh, the U.S. Army, and plus, the UN and all that was theorizing, this is how we're going to combat and essentially get loyalty from the local people. And so that's the program. That was the mission, to create Afghan local police. Um,
And were you actually interacting
yeah,
with the locals?
yeah. So we were attached. So attached is like partner up with or assigned to special forces. We were attached to the team, and we were handing out AKs, training them to shoot, give them uniform, teaching them, basic, like, this is how you target, this is like what you do, life in a day of a local police, help them build a little, like, security post station along, like, the road next to the river, and they would guard it. And a lot of it is, like, outside my scope, right? Like, there were, like, I guess the mayor of that village or whatever you call them were meeting with, like, the peer on the U.S. Army of, like, whatever major or general, and they were hashing out their plan and stuff like that. So that's part of it, right? It's a year-long, multiple-year kind of thing, and so that was like, and put it in, like, commercial term or enterprise term. It's basically a project that, yeah. So I was with that, interview people, signing them up, taking their pictures. I think we might have ID cards at one point. I don't remember, but yeah, just
And
training them.
they spoke English?
No, we had interpreters.
Okay.
So yeah, we had interpreters to help us out.
And did it feel dangerous to you while you were there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It absolutely is. Sometimes it gets to me, but I think after you get numb, um, after like 2 weeks. So you, like I said, if you don't know how to compartmentalize or know how to process, you have a lot. Like, this is how people get, like, PTSD, right? They get a lot of problems, like a lot of problems. But yes, it's always there, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You hear gunfire, you hear, mortar shells, you have alarms going off in the middle of the night. It's just constant, and so I don't like note it anymore. Like, it's a thing that happens. I don't know if you ever watched, like, The Wire, the TV show back in the '90s or anything like that.
Seen it a few times, probably not enough to know
Yeah, but
specifics.
it's like I forgot. I was watching a TV show one time. They were interviewing, like, a kid in a neighborhood, and I think it was a documentary. And there were, like, gunshots in this bad neighborhood, right? And the kid was just talking to the camera crew, and it didn't phase them, whereas the camera crew was freaking out. And that's kind of like the same thing that was happening to me over there, right? After a while, you just kind of, like, you analyze and process information super fast. Um, I think there was, like, a surreal moment once or twice I had it when, because we had, like, a communal shower, so to speak, right? So you have to go to a place because you were living in, like, a shack, pretty much. And then it's our base. Like, I live on a base. It's like, think of a square box in the middle of nowhere, and we just put up a fence around it. And then, of course, it's reinforced and all that, and you have people manning it. But you were going to this place to take a shower. I was in the middle of the night because, it's cooler. It's so hot there. Um, and I was walking back, have nothing on me, which is fine because I was in the base. Yes, danger could happen, but I'd rather go to shower with my flip flops and my shower kit and nothing else. And then when I go back, I was walking back, and in the distance, I could hear gunfire. So imagine a square, right? And then draw that square out on the four corners, extended square. And so we would have posts, right? Like a outpost. And part of that outpost is shared between us and the local Afghan army. Um, Now my unit wasn't dealing with all that, but there's a rotation, there's a schedule, right? And then in the distance, I remember walking back, I saw it's called tracer rounds. So when you shoot when you shoot a weapon, some of the rounds are tracer, like they have a little fire on them, so that you can see where your fire is going. So at night, you can see tracer rounds. Like you could hear gunfire, and you know bullets are flying a certain way. And I remember just walking, and I was like, "Oh, we're being shot at." Oh, it's immediately within the second I realized that I was like, "Oh, it's too far," and then I was like, "Oh, I'm fine." And within that second, I was like, "Wow, I'm completely numb to this now." And I remember, when we touched down the first day or first night, it was like every moment it was like, "What's going on?" You hear something, you're like, "What's going on?" But after a few months or whatever, it was different. So you have this instinct to analyze danger super fast, and yeah, part of the problem when people go back is they don't know how to turn that off, and it takes time, right? So yeah, that's when like this surreal moment where I was like able enough to understand that, and it was very surreal because I was like, huh, interesting. I just able to be introspective enough to understand what was going on. But if you don't, know how to pull yourself out of that, you're just in that state all the time, constantly, stressing yourself out. So, yeah. So
Very
yeah,
interesting.
there's danger, but think of firemen who respond super fast to go and put out a fire, and then when they don't have a fire, they just hang out and are completely like cool and relaxed. That's pretty much how it is all the time. So you have to be able to do that. Otherwise, you have a breakdown.
And so, what was your rank when you? Well, first of all, how long were you in Afghanistan?
I was there for a year, so typically 11 months because the month getting there and getting back takes a lot of logistics. And so typically you have to go somewhere, you have to stay there, you have to go to another spot, you have to stay there. It takes time to move people and their equipment to the end spot. So the destination is like, it takes a long time to get there. So getting there and getting back takes a lot of time. So I was there about a year, 11 months ish. When I joined the army, because of my college, I was E4, which is enlisted 4, um, which is a newer rank. It's called specialist, and then I stayed that way until I left, which is very rare. Most people, move on and rank up, but I didn't. I had options, and I didn't want to. I
Okay.
was too lazy. Yeah,
And so, is that a higher rank? Are there lower ranks below E4?
yeah. There was only 3 lower ranks, so basic training is 4 months, or no, is it one? Yeah, 4 months. Basic training now is 4 months, and you go from E1 to E9, I believe, in the entire army. But think of the E7, E8, E9 as management or middle management, I suppose. And
Are
so
they
you have a lot.
sergeants at
Yeah,
that level?
they have different names. So like some of them is I believe it's staff sergeant. Forgot some of the name. Master sergeant, and then something else. There's a lot, but at that point you have a lot. You have a lot of E6, you have a lot of E7, E8, and stuff like that throughout the entire organization of the army. And then E1s has the most, right? So you go in as E1, and then you go E2, E3, and by you rank up after spend time in the army. So it's automatic.
So, if you're an E4 and there's an E1 near you, I mean, is the E1 expected to obey your
Yes,
commands? Okay.
yeah, but it doesn't. Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So there's command structure, and it goes by rank. Uh, and then let's see, an officer is O. They start out as lieutenant, O1, and then they go all the way up. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So, after you left Afghanistan, how much longer were you in the army for?
I was doing there for like a year and maybe a few months. So it takes some time. We came back and essentially at the time it was 2013, 2014. And at that time, like we kind of declare Afghanistan war is over, but it's not. It's weird. And then so I spent another year-ish in Tacoma, Washington. That's where Joint Base Lewis McCord, we call him JBLM, is based. And so that's my unit was there. So yeah, I hung out there for another year or something, and then I left.
What
Yeah.
were you doing during that time? What was
So
your
when
period?
the army, when they're not at war, they just train or just do your job. Basically, just they find things for you to do. Let's just say that.
Mm-hmm.
But every year there's training, and then you train up to that training. So you're always like preparing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did it feel like the pressure was off once you got back to Washington,
Uh,
Washington State?
yeah. I would say so. But ironically, which
Was that a
sounds
good feeling? I mean,
no, it's not. So it sounds
no.
crazy and insane, but it makes a lot of sense when you're in that environment. And I would say to this day, I would do that, right? So I would change the policy to, and they did do that for a certain unit, but my unit wasn't lucky enough to be able to select. So after the Afghan war was declared over-ish, they had a downsize, right? So the army downsized, and they did a thing where you can actually sign a piece of paper, and they say that your term is fulfilled, so you can leave. And they did it to a unit, and they merged different units into different things. But generally speaking, after that, you kind of don't. It's very different when you're deploying. Deploy is like when you actually go to war. Um, your mental state is just different, and so training doesn't make sense anymore. Like certain part of training makes sense, but certain part doesn't, and so it's very, yeah, it's very. I would say tough to hang
Kind of
in
a
there.
letdown, I guess. Or...
Yeah, it's stressful in a different way. So it's like, yeah, it's just not fun times, especially if you're infantry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got out of the army, and then what did you do after that?
So I went back to corporate life. Before I left, I was working in the technology field. So I came back and worked essentially a temp job that rolled into like a real job, and it was here. I was in Cleveland, but I applied job for here. I applied to maybe 3 or 4, and somehow I was lucky enough for the interview to strung together in a week. So I came down here, kind of stayed with the one sibling, interview for 3, 4, and then took one of the offering and kind of started working with like no housing, and then eventually settled down and stayed with the one sibling for maybe 3, 4 years because she was down in Apex Fuquay area, and she's still there now, but she has a little bit more room, so I stayed with them and worked in what I call customer support service, kind of IT support kind of role, and then move on from there. Yeah.
What was your degree in college?
It was in business administration, but the field I pursued was in, at the time it was called business information system. So it was basically information or IT, information technology today. But at the time, my school was really small, and they roll it underneath the business school. So yeah.
So does your degree relate to
No,
what you're doing?
almost nothing. They exposed some concept, but it was so new at the time that it would be more successful if I was, computer science major, where I took maybe 1 or 2 classes, but the most of it was on the job training, a little bit of like self interest, so I knew a little bit, and then now, especially now, there's a lot of certifications out there. So you can get certified in this field and that role and this role. It's just tons of certification out there. And so it's a lot of like technical education. So if I had pursued that, which I realized it's never going to be enough. And I'm not that kind of technical. I don't have the skill sets required or the interest required to maintain that. So I choose to just kind of switch again into what I do now, which is, a little sales, less technical, but still in a technology realm, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that job that you just talked about applying for, is that the job that you work in now?
No, that was 2-3 jobs ago. Yeah.
2-3 jobs.
Yeah.
So have you been just sticking to the technology sales arena since that time?
Correct. So when I left the Army, that was 2014. And then this role I'm doing now, I did another role similar to it right before. So maybe I did the customer support, IT support kind of thing for just about 2 years. And I move on to immediately to like the sales side after that. So yeah.
And that's what you're doing now?
Correct.
Okay. And do you enjoy it?
For the most part, yeah, I do.
What do you like about it?
You can never be like 100% in this role, at least for me. So it's very difficult. So development is already built in. So you can always it's a art and science kind of thing. So you can always get better at it. You can never stop learning or growing. I mean, technology is the same thing with the IT support role. You can get certified, but there's nothing to certify you as a good salesman. You just know how to get better and learn how to get better. And at the time, I was kind of working in the, I started in Toastmaster, and I realized like what we do, communication, learning to speak, knowing how to write, learn how to listen. I'm lacking a lot of those skills, and this job or this industry, converge very nicely with those things that I'm trying to pursue. So it's completely almost way farther away than what I did in the Army, as much as possible, like 180 degrees different. And so, yeah, I like it because it's challenging. I am plateauing a little bit, but at the same time, it's still in the technology realm, which I'm a big fan of. So I like sci-fi and all that stuff. So it's like a good blend of everything that I'm trying to pursue. So if one thing fails, something else pick up for me to keep doing it, if I like it. Yeah, but I'm not sure if I answer it. Yeah.
No, any answer you give is informative. So thank you. Okay, let's switch gears here a little bit. You described yourself as admiring Spock in the past.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Yeah, I think his I forgot his name now. Nimoy. Oh God, something Nimoy.
Leonard Nimoy.
Leonard Nimoy have a very unique look as an actor, and of course with the Vulcan with the eyebrows and the pointy ears, it's very elf-like. But at the time, I didn't know what I was never exposed to the fantasy realm with elf and dwarves and all that stuff. So that's my first like alien that I can think of, and I just thought it was so cool. It makes such an impact on me, and the way he processed things, I loved it because I could relate to him. I didn't know all these terminology when I was younger. Of course, I just oh, that's cool. But it's the show itself taught me about logic, and I'm like, yes. All logic, let's just get it all in motion. It's so stupid. And it's like, everything I see in my life is very, all the problems, and especially like drama. Like I never got or understood drama. I think the closest thing I got to it was when TNT, drama's here kind of logo is Law and Order. I kind of get that. But any other shows they have where it's all like, annoying people stuff, I never got it. I just love all the other stuff. So I love Spock because he represents the delineation, right? And how humans can be better. At least that's to me. I'm not sure if that was intended. I think it is intended in Star Trek to kind of show that. And so I it spoke to me. I'm definitely the target audience they were going for with that character. I don't know who wrote it, but whoever did.
Gene Roddenberry.
Gene Roddenberry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, is it based on like any kind of books, on novellas or anything, or just just Star Trek came out and that was it. Like, it came out there. In the universe.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I know they were, how the crew of the Enterprise was very diverse.
Yes. Yeah.
There were different races, and then Spock was an alien.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is like the other reason why I like it so much. I think it's one of the few TV shows that when I connected with my dad on. We also watch a bunch of MacGyvers as well, and I think some of that, like I guess he has the gadgets kind of technology, fan thing, and I kind of like the same thing, but the newer version of that is all software and apps and stuff like that. So I, is a fan of all that stuff, which is kind of like interconnected on that level. So I like Star Trek because of some of the things they do that's very different at the time, very unique and forward and progressive. So, but Spock particularly because he's not an idiot like Jim Kirk, so that's why I like him.
did you like Next Generation?
I watched some of that. I didn't watch it enough to care for it. So I think my original exposure to Star Trek was just a few of the episodes of Star Trek.
The original series.
Yeah, the original series. And then I move on from that, right? So, but, Spock stuck with me. Right, yeah.
Yeah. Next Generation sort of grows on you. The first couple of seasons, I don't think they really knew what they were doing. They were trying to feel out the show, but as it progressed towards the end, it just kept getting better and better.
Yeah.
So I don't know, something to pursue in the future, maybe. Now you also have mentioned that you enjoy action adventure movies.
Yeah.
And sci-fi.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, is that along the same lines? Well, Spock is logical, but so action and adventure, is there a relationship between action adventure and sci-fi? Obviously, sci-fi connects to Spock, but is there a relationship between action adventure and what you like about Spock?
No.
So, okay, well then what is
it's
it
basically
about that appeals to you?
Yeah, actually, I think action adventure has to come with my childhood. I just grew up on that kind of cinema. So there's no there were exposure to different things, but the late '80s, Hong Kong cinemas took over Pan Asia, and basically that is the standard. So at the time, the U.S. didn't know about Jackie Chan, but the '80s is where he kind of broke out. So he did the '70s when he was still young, and in the '80s he basically started forming his own stunt team, which is a very new concept. Now we have stunt team in America. But it wasn't, I'll say the last 10 years, 10, 20 years that we started doing that. So action has been in that world for such a long time that it has an impact on me. Yeah, I think just culture, growing up in the 70s and 80s in Asia, or the cinema that was Hong Kong cinema exposed me to so much of that stuff that I like. Growing up, I know about Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee immediately, kind of like, almost on the same level as sports stars that worship here. We know about them and we adore them. Before music people or pop stars or athletes, action superheroes, actors are really it. So yeah, I think I get burnout every now and then, but I like action a lot more than other genres.
What's your favorite action movie?
It's a rolling thing. I used to say Enter the Dragon is the top there is, but I have to say it's a rolling thing, and I would say within the last 2-3 years, the John Wick series is really good. So that's my my favorite go-to for the time being.
Mm-hmm. And what in particular about that captures your imagination?
So they popularized a new action subgenre, I would say, and basically they invented gun fu, which is super cool. There were some concept of it before they did this. So the stunt team from John Wick is the same people that work with him in The Matrix, and so he he loves doing it, and then the stunt team realized he can memorize or do the choreography by himself for long sequences, which is very difficult for Western action stars to do. They don't know how to do any of it. They just very ignorant of kung fu and martial arts in general. And Keanu Reeves is the exception where he likes doing it, and then he can do it, and then he can kind of act. I mean, if you call acting. So he can do it, and he can do it well, and it's very rare. Whereas in Asian cinema, there's tons of people that can do it, and so they combine normal fighting with tactical shooting. Would you see in like Collateral with Tom Cruise a little bit? You've seen in other action movies. It's very cool and good to watch, and so they combo the two together. It is amazing. It's like amazing. If you see, I think Equilibrium, which I recommended before with Christian Bale, there is some of that, and it was the initial. I would say that's the kind of like the spawning moment. Whereas John Wick, they took it to the next level and perfected it. So, yeah.
So it's like the artistry of
you just have to watch it, man.
But that's what you like.
It's the artistry and then how cool it is. It's very cool and it's very new. And I think that a lot of TV shows are going to try to copy it and they're going to fail epically because they don't know how to do it.
But, well, so what does it mean to know how to do it?
Do it well. So...
well, what is it that
gun fu? They're not going to be able to replicate it. If you want me to define it, you're going to have to watch it. It's just an amazing blend. What they did is they combined judo, actual tactical shooting, plus other regular martial arts, and a variety of like tactical gun know-how. So if you ever watch like any kind of action where the guy is like, this is a sniper and this is a thing and this is simple, real fast, put it together kind of thing. That's the vibe that you get because the character he plays in is a top end assassin that knows literally how to kill people with a pencil, and they did it in the second movie. It was amazing. And he can shoot any guns. He knows all the guns, and this is like, if you ever see Transporter, the series with Jason Statham.
No.
He's like an expert at driving. And so I would say it's a B plus series, is a kind of underground hit. Whereas instead of assassin, his job in the gang world is to transport things. So John Wick is like a top end assassin that knows how to do anything. And so he's a living weapon walking around. And so that's amazing. He show off all these capabilities that you see bit and pieces in like video games and movies, and they pull it all together. It's amazing for me as an action fan.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to ask you to define it. What I was trying to get at what you particularly
liked about it
as a window into your mind, and I think we got there.
I like it because it was really good. I mean, you just had never seen it before in anything else. Not the volume of it either. In Equilibrium, you see a little bit of it, but in John Wick, you see a lot of it, and it's like going to a buffet and eating everything you want. Right, and it's the top end notch. Like if there is a top end buffet of action movie, that is the John Wick series. Because from now on, from John Wick on, anybody that tried to do anything that is not as good is gonna be compared against John Wick. Like he is the standard. Kind of like The Godfather is a gangster movie. Like everything is gonna be based on it compared to The Godfather. So that's how good it's gonna be.
Okay, so John Wick outdoes The Matrix.
Oh yeah.
In that capacity. Yeah.
The Matrix is a good movie and it's action, but it's not gun fu. Like this is a new thing, and you will, if you haven't seen it, this is like why I want to have you see it and have your mind blown.
Okay, I guess I have to see it now. Are there any closing thoughts you have on that subject, or did we?
Yeah, if you don't know about it, you should probably look into it. And if you don't like that, well then, action and adventure is not your thing, or action is not your thing.
Okay.
That's my 2 cents about it. Yeah.
Okay. So we've reached the final subject that I want to touch on. You have articulated in the past that you're an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
You also said that you were raised Roman Catholic, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I was too. So how did you come to your current understanding?
I think college was where I really kind of discovered and understood different things. And so I move or transition over, I would say, a period of a year. It's always been there, like inkling in the back. I think, like, starting senior high school, I was already kind of diverging from the path, I suppose. And then college really solidified that path. And, being a fan of, like, Spock and Logic and all that stuff built up to that moment. But what was the final capstone, I think, was, we have this idea of separation of church and state, right? And I remember specifically, going home from college, going to church with the family. And at one point, literally, the priest was recommending who for me to vote, which I talked to my dad about. And he's like, "That's what they have to kind of do that." And I was like, "No, that's not." Separation of church and state, man. Like, why are you influencing my voting process? Which I suppose everybody's, in one way or another, trying to affect somebody else on how to vote. But I really, like, that was the last mark. Like, that pushed me over the edge. And then I was like, no, this is, you can't, blend the two. And you shouldn't try to do that. But from a bigger, like, macroeconomic sense, I understand how this, they've been doing that for eons. And, I listened to George Carlin. I was a big fan of George Carlin. He's big atheist. And then I read, what did I read? I think I was exposed to some other atheist concept and then was reading about it. And then it's really the least, how will I say it? The least pressure as far as human beings put on other human beings, and the more freeing that I found it to be. So I thought that was like, yeah. But to this day, I'm still what I call a closet atheist, right? Like, other than my close friends, my buddies that I talk to, maybe some of my coworkers, or, the podcast listeners, and then stuff like that. I don't go around advocating or trying to commercialize or clearly define that stuff. It's just, unless someone asks about it. But yeah, like, to my parents, especially like my parents and family, they just think, I'm like, what do you call those, lost sheep kind of person, someone who just stopped believing, but not, 180 degrees like atheists. So I don't think they would even enjoy the concept or allow it. So it's not it's not something I bring up in my, Thanksgiving family and all that jazz.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're pretty strong in your conviction.
Yeah, I think it was a clear decisions around my early years, and I haven't found, like, anything to negate or counteract or pull me back. Like, there's nothing for me to, reverse my decision, so to speak, which I'm open to, but it's just like, nothing that I found interesting anywhere else that I was like, okay, cool, but no, I think religion free is better than picking and choosing one. So, yeah.
So, so it was a disagreement with the Roman Catholic Church in the sense that the priest was, telling
affecting political, yeah.
Yeah, but that translated itself to the belief that, there's no divinity or
No. That was just the last straw. There's huge amount of
Okay, so you were already doubting it, and then that
yeah,
gave you the
yeah,
permission to leave that organized structure and
correct. Or just
and
deny it. Or yeah, deny that. Not deny it. Just don't accept it. So it's not that incident, but there's huge amount of things I've read, things I grew up on, things I listened to that affected my thinking that way, and then I stopped. And that was the last mark that I remember. But there's huge amount of stuff that have impacted me so that I steer a certain way, and
mm,
allow me to kind of use logic to move out of what I used to be as a Roman, practicing Roman Catholic.
mhm.
Yeah.
um, is there anything other than what you described that led you in that direction? So you mentioned books and stuff, but was there anything else?
No, just I guess general information and things I've gathered. You know, um, I don't know if you know about this. I forgot what they call themselves. It's kind of a joke, but it also kind of one of the Northern European countries made a made a fake religion that came to become like a running joke.
Is it the
Uh,
flying spaghetti monster?
Correct. So whoever made that, I think it was around the same time that I was in college. So of course that boosted my idea, and then I was reading into it and all that stuff, and I was like, yeah. Also, I think I remember taking world history class. I don't remember much from it. I never worked so hard in my life for a B minus ever, but it was so unfair because it was a 101 class, and I did so much homework, and then I got a B minus, and I was like, I don't understand. But then I remember the Epic of Gilgamesh was taught in that, and it's just a lot of things click into place. Like it just pile on one another. Where I'm like, okay, that makes more sense. So just kind of made a decision for myself. Really, it's not like you know, it's not like Friends or anything like that. So
Mhm.
I'm not sure if you were answer your question or if you were trying to figure something else out.
No. I just wanted your take on it. Okay. I guess to wrap things up, you and I met in Toastmasters, and then I guess it was your idea to have a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you think things are going so far with the podcast, and where would you like to take it going forward?
I think things are going well. I just found your perspective on things very different than everyone else, and so I think it's worth it to explore certain topics. And you know, I was hoping that your introspection expand out, but that's fine because your introspection is very, central around you and your perspective of the world. And I think my take on the world is, if there is such a thing as outrospection, I'm not sure if that word exists, but it's more like how human beings is going to keep, how our race of being is going to keep evolving and surviving and all that stuff, going to space. I'm very curious, about that stuff. And so that's my take on it. And so as a podcast team, I think it works out really well. I originally, it's just everything I do, I try to do multi-purpose. So it's like killing two birds with one stone. And it's also, developing listening skills or developing communication skills, learning about podcasting, mostly Photoshop and Adobe Premiere, like video editing is also something I was trying to learn, but without like a project or without like a way of pushing me, I wouldn't have done it. And so this podcast kind of served some of that purpose as well, right? And of course, I enjoy speaking with you, so that's kind of help. I hope that we can make my goal is very what you call it, step by step, so to speak. And so I hope that we get to episode 30, we get to episode 50, we get to episode 100, and just keep kind of growing to this format, and just see where it goes from here. So it's basically a project to kind of fulfill some of that stuff I want to acquire as a skill set, but also kind of enjoy. And so far, it's good. It's not so much homework like Toastmaster, because sometimes I feel like I'm doing so much work for Toastmaster that I get burnt out. But it's also interesting to kind of just think out some of the problems we have as humans, or just diverge or bare minimum research into certain things, because we're not I'm not an expert, and I think it's worth it to think out or theorize out some of this so that you know how to formulate your own thoughts versus like what most people do, which is I also do it where I look up information to learn how to approach a subject, and then talking with you or debating with you allow me to make it my own, not just digesting and then spitting back out stuff I've read, which I think majority of human beings do that. They just look for information to agree with themselves, and that's very easy and attractive to do. It's very difficult to do the reverse.
That's confirmation bias.
Correct. Like, how do you get away from that when you just look up stuff that's, especially with now the technology we have is algorithm based, it's just gonna show you all that stuff, because Google probably knows me, and not probably, Google knows me better than I know myself, right? And so that's my fear. Like, how do I break the bubble of my own stuff without and have a healthy discussion? That's very rare and hard to do, even with coworker or friends, right? Like, that's with you, it's a different kind of friendship. It's Toastmaster professional. It's really unique. I don't know if outside of work you can have a work relationship with someone else, unless you co-author a book together or something, or cook on a TV show or something. It's very different, and podcasting allow that as an environment to exist. And so I think it's worth it to keep going. And my hope is we get to episode 100 and make this podcast unique enough, and which we started in the last episode, where people tune in for that, and that would be amazing. So
yeah, I agree. I'm with you, and I enjoy talking to you as well, and thank you very much for allowing me to interview you today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna re-listen to some of the question and then see if I can spin it back on you for next episode.
I think the key is to come up with some core questions, and then based on my answers, come up with follow-up questions on the fly.
Yeah,
that's basically what I was doing.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. I guess that's it.
All right. Peace out, listeners.
Peace out.
Hello, listeners. This is George with the EpicMetaPodcast. Thank you very much for listening. Did you know that you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and YouTube? You probably knew that one of those was the case, but the other ones are the case as well. Please be sure to click the like button if that's in accord with your reality. You can also share our podcast with your friends, give us a 5-star rating, and all of that. Please also give us your comments. Be very interested to read them. But more importantly than all of that, just continue to listen to the show. And as Thang would say, be good and be well until we meet again.